Hey there, everyone. This is Eric from Hovercast TCG, bringing you guys more quality TCG content and discussion for all ages. So today, I'm not here with Britt and Travis as usual. Travis is actually moving to Los Angeles, and Britt's computer is still unfortunately broken, so he can't record. So I've decided to bring in two really qualified guests for you guys today to talk with. Both of them are webmasters of two fantastic sites, Andrew Wimbolt from the Charizard Lounge and Chris Shumansky from Six Prizes. So today we're going to be talking about Seattle Regionals, the results that happened there, and how it'll impact the meta for two upcoming regionals this week, Madison Regionals in Wisconsin and Birmingham Regionals in the United Kingdom. So without further ado, I guess let's just get right into it. So Chris, you actually went to Seattle. I know you played Mega Rayquaza. Why don't you talk about how you did and what you played, as well as Garbodor, I guess, at Seattle. Was it really 55% of the meta, or 75% of the meta, I guess 24 out of 32? Do you think there was an accurate representation of what was actually there? Was it really just a Garbodor fest? So yeah, why don't you start?
Well, that was many of my talking points. Played a Mega Ray list that was pretty unorthodox, mostly inspired, almost completely inspired by what Sean Boise suggested to me the week before the event. Sudowoodo, Magarina EX, Oricorio, Giratina Promo, Mallow, just different stuff that helped the deck flow better without items and counter more matchups. As it happens, I ended up 6-3, I think 45th or something like that. So got the top 64 points, but the Drampa Garbodor list I was testing against was not seemingly a fair representation of what most of the field played. So I did not experience quite the results I would have hoped for in that matchup, which led to me going 1-3 or 4-7 in individual games against Garbodor decks, and 5-0 or 2-1 against not Garbodor decks. So quite the polarity there. Not something I'll consider again for Madison, but was an interesting deck to play, contrast to the styles of many decks I played this year. As for Garbodor, it was definitely a big part of the room. As you mentioned, that 55% that Nabil Hyatt said he observed when he walked around the room. I would not be surprised at all if that was an accurate figure. Simply, it seemed like there was just every table had Garbodor. But I don't think that'll happen again. Even with the hype the deck will surely see this weekend, I certainly don't expect it to repeat, being 24 out of 32 top day 2 spots.
Yeah, so Andrew, you didn't go to Seattle, but what are your thoughts on Garbodor? Do you agree with Chris? You don't think it'll do 24 out of 32? Or do you think Garbodor really is just that strong and oppressive? What are your thoughts on it?
I don't think it's that strong and oppressive. I think it probably caught a lot of people off guard who didn't take it seriously. I thought myself that Garbodor had the potential to be a really strong play in Seattle, because I thought people wouldn't take it seriously enough as they should have in the first weekend. And I'm not exactly sure how much that happened, if like 55% of people actually played it. But I don't think it's possible for it to go up any further, and I don't think it'll maintain, because 55% of the field and 75% of day 2 is just like insane numbers, that it seems like that's probably the maximum limit. So it'll probably just go down on that. I'd expect it to be like 25 to 30% of the field in Madison, just because even if people try to play around the Garbodor part of the deck, the big basic part's so good, with Trampa hitting 180 on turn 2, that with that being so good, you can't really just tech against Garbodor, because the Trampa will put so much pressure on you anyhow.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think 55% of the field is absurd. I can't think of a time since I've been playing, at least, where a deck has matched that and, just had such dominance at a tournament. 55% of the people played it, and then 75% of top cut was that. I can't think of a time when that happened. Maybe Luxchamp, but that was before my time, so I don't know. But yeah, that's crazy. I think Garbodor is really strong as well. I would not be surprised to see it continue to do that well. I don't think it will, because I think it's unsustainable. It's absurd. But it's definitely a strong deck, and I think everyone should, if not tech for Garbodor, consider playing Garbodor this weekend, because it really is just that strong. But let's talk about the deck that performed second best in Seattle. Decidueye Vileplume had 3 placements, including Travis, our very own. He made top 32. I don't think he made top 16 with it. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, Travis, Chase Maloney, and I think Justin Bakari made it with Decidueye Vileplume, 3 of the best players in the game. So clearly they know what they're doing. Is Decidueye still good? Do you think it can survive in this Drampa Garbodor heavy meta? And would you play it for Madison? Let's start this question with Andrew.
I wouldn't play it myself. Like, when I play against it with a lot of decks, it seems very good still. But every time I've tried it out, it just kind of clumps up on me and doesn't end up being very good. But I think with Drampa Garbodor probably seeing less play as people try to counter it more, I think Decidueye might have opportunity to be better depending on what decks people try to counter Drampa with. Like, it really depends. Like, if people try to counter it with, like, Volcanion, for example, then that wouldn't be good for Decidueye. But if people try to counter it with, like, janky fighting decks, then that'll be really good for Decidueye. And I think people will keep playing Decidueye just as there's a group of people that just really loves playing it, and it doesn't seem like they're gonna be moving off of it.
Yeah, that's very true. Chris, what do you think about Decidueye?
It's certainly something that's never going to, well, I shouldn't say never, but in the foreseeable future isn't going to drop out of the competitive sphere simply because there are many players that are very dedicated to it, that swear by it as an answer to many formats. Personally, I think it's positioned very precariously at the moment. Garbodor Drampa is a significant issue, but even more so at Garbodor Espeon, if that continues to see play like it did last week. Confusion's very bad for Decidueye Vileplume because, well, for one, there's no easy way to move Pokemon around unless you get close down on turn 1, which you probably aren't going to do all that entirely often. So, generally speaking, it's not something I'd want to take into this weekend. If I were to consider it, I would want a list that minimized item usage to help mitigate some of Garbodor's usefulness. I'd probably have at least a low-end Vulpix. Probably would include a Ninetales or 2 as well. Because the Vulpix, the Surf Beacon is just such a universally useful attack for setting up that deck. It allows you to go for your Vileplume as soon as possible without worrying too much about the Decidueye, because you can just search it out later. Whereas before you had to kind of balance, what do I set up first, what order do I do it, what will make the most sense. Now you can just sort of go for that Vileplume.
Yeah, I totally agree on the Alolan Vulpix point. I think Alolan Vulpix is just nuts. I think that card is really good. I think it's a lot better than Ninetales. I actually do agree with you, too. I think the Vulpix and Ninetales version of Decidueye is just better. I know you didn't come out and say it, but we've had talks about this before the recording, and you said you like that version better, Chris. And I agree with you. I think it's just a lot more consistent, and I love Vulpix. It's just such a great Ninetales Garbodor counter, excuse me. Because you don't need to play items to set up. I honestly think a lot of Stage 2 decks will start playing Vulpix as like their starter. Maybe even Greninja will play 3 or 4 instead of Talonflame because it's so good. But yeah, I think Decidueye is pretty alright. I'm not a fan of the deck. Like Andrew said, every time I try to play the deck, it just clunks out on me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong with sequencing or something, but I don't have good results with the deck. I would expect to play 1 or 2 probably at Madison, but I don't expect it to do particularly well, just because I think it's very clunky. But speaking of a clunky deck, Greninja Greninja didn't have any top 32 placings in Seattle, I don't think, which is kind of surprising considering that a lot of us, including myself, thought the deck was, back on the rise because of Choice Band and Field Flora. So I know both of you guys have had some experience with Greninja. Both of you guys played it at Worlds this past year, actually. So, Chris, why don't we get your take to start off on Greninja? Do you think it is still good in this format, and do you think it'll do well in Madison, I guess?
Yeah, I guess at this point I've played Greninja for far too many tournaments, including that World you mentioned, 2 or 3 regionals this year, none of which have been to great effect, to be honest. We have always had a struggle between balancing the list of what you need and what can help make the deck more consistent. But in the end, a deck that needs to devote a quarter of its space to Pokemon, that, unlike Vespiquen, doesn't get utility out of all those Pokemon. 8 of those slots in Greninja are there just as a means to getting Greninjas out, which isn't terribly great deck space utilization. It's a consistency issue. So overall, Greninja is fairly inconsistent. Even, it's ironic I say this now, that it has Choice Band and Field Blower. It should be better, but after one of the regionals earlier this year, I wrote that I would never play Greninja again, and no one else should either, simply because of the consistency issues that it faces. I'm sure that it will at some point make a rebound, but it's certainly not something I would want to be playing.
Yeah, Andrew, what about you?
I'm not a big fan of Greninja. Actually, looking back at some of my most recent articles when discussing, matchups, I've put for some of my decks that as a rough Greninja matchup, I wouldn't worry about Greninja, because I didn't think Greninja was that good. I thought it'd fail early and then stop seeing play as the format went on. And the biggest problem I think it has is that it just doesn't really have a good Garbodor matchup, just as Drampa is able to just take a bunch of knockouts early. And then in the late game, it just becomes a Greninja versus Garbodor trade. And I think the best Greninja list is Igor's with the heavy ball search lines. And that puts a lot of items in the discard pile, which means Garbodor's going to be one-hit KOing for the most part. And then, so in the late game, when you're ending them constantly, to even knock out a Garbodor, they need a giant water shuriken in addition to attacking you. And I believe they need to Moonlight Slash as well to hit the damage numbers for the knockout. And I guess they could leave the energy on the Greninjas, but if they're a bad player, sometimes they pick it up. But if you just end them, it's going to be difficult for them to keep streaming Pokemon, as well as draw into the energy to Giant Water Shuriken and keep attacking. And then that's just not even taking into account that you can ability lock them. And then even stuff like Jeffrey Chang's Vespiquen, which typically didn't run anything to ability lock as of late. He had one Hex Maniac, so as soon as you shut off Giant Water Shuriken through Vespiquen, Greninja can't beat it anymore. So even small stuff like that is problematic for Greninja.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you think it loses to Garbodor. I actually thought that was one of the selling points of Greninja, is that it actually has a good Garbodor matchup. So it's interesting to see 2 different viewpoints there. I'm on the same boat as you guys. I think it's strong, but I would never touch the deck. It's ridiculously inconsistent, and that's its biggest issue. Would I be surprised to see one win the tournament or make top 8? No, because I think the deck is good. But I wouldn't be the one to be in top 8 or winning with it, because I wouldn't play it. But one more question about Greninja before we move on. You kind of already answered it, Andrew, but I'll ask Chris, I guess, as well. So Andrew prefers the repeat ball version, but what do you think, Chris? Do you like Talonflame or the heavy ball search version? Or Alolan Vulpix, like I just threw out? Do you think that's an option?
I don't think I'd play Alolan Vulpix. I not much on Talonflame. I thought it was very necessary back when Vileplume decks really ruled the format. Sidra Vileplume is a little bit different because it actually attacks with something that just runs through Greninjas anyway. But like the Vileplume decks of yesteryear, really Talonflame was important to locking up that matchup. I would say a heavy search engine is a good idea. I'm not sure I'd ever play Repeat Ball, but a search engine of that nature is probably the best way to play the deck. And that obviously makes it weaker to Garbodor, which kind of leads to an inherent paradox where Greninjas is never good for that reason. But,
yeah, I personally prefer Talonflame. I think it's really good against Garbodor because you don't need to play all the items to search out your stuff. But I can see why people would want to repeat all of it more. I think it's probably more consistent than the Talonflame version. I really like Talonflame. But Andrew already kind of mentioned this, so it's a perfect segue. You talked about Jeffrey Chang and his Vespiquen list that he took second with at Seattle. Everyone knows about Vespiquen now. Everyone thought it was dead before. Was Jeffrey's second place finish a fluke, would you say? Or do you think Vespiquen's here to stay? And we'll start with Andrew, because I know you're the resident Vespiquen player here.
I don't think his finish was a fluke at all. Like, at Anaheim Regionals, he actually got, fourth place at Anaheim Regionals with Vespiquen already. So he clearly knows how to play Vespiquen pretty well. And then Vespiquen was a deck that I was thinking about for the International Championship. And I was just like kind of sitting on it and being like, I hope no one plays this for a regional because it's really good against Garbodor and it's really good against a bunch of other stuff except Decidueye, Vileplume. And with Decidueye seeing a massive decrease in play, like the tournament was like set up great for Vespiquen to make a deep run. The only thing that makes me question it now is just now that it's known, people are going to start playing counters to it, most likely Oricorio, and just from what I've read and heard about Seattle, it seemed like there's a lot of Oricorio being played already. So now that Vespiquen got second at regionals, I think the amount of that card is just going to go up way more. And I know people say that you won't be punished from it unless you have so many Pokemon in the discard pile, but that's not 100% true because a lot of like the Drampa lists I saw were playing like rescue structure, so they could use it twice and then set up the damage correctly to really hit you. And then, especially against like Garbodor, sometimes the game just comes down to you playing down like a Shaman just so you can draw into your DC and knock them out, end them, and hope they don't draw into their resources. Like they need to evolve and then attach sometimes if they don't already have the Garbodor in play. If they have the Oricorio and you played that Shaman down, that's or even a Tapu Lele if you're getting towards the end of the game. If you have something like that on your bench, that's a free snipe. That's just 2 prizes that could end the game. That's a kind of thing where you won't always be hurt by it, but if you play it enough times, I feel like the Oricorio is gonna come out ahead of the Vespiquen deck most of the time.
Gotcha. Chris, what about you? What are your thoughts on Vespiquen? I don't know if you've ever played it or not, but still.
Yeah, I have played it somewhat this year, actually. Anaheim included. Not a huge fan of it for this weekend. The one big draw I think it has is that you can do so many things with Pokemon line. Like Jeffrey, for example, asked me on Friday night if I had extra Giratina promos for dealing with Greninja. Not that you necessarily, I think, want to play it in Vespiquen, but you have that option. You can play so many different things without messing with the core of the deck too much, which is incredibly powerful as a utility. I liked not particularly big on Zoroark as a card, but I do think it works well in the context of that best list, especially down with Choice Band. Going into this weekend, Oricorio is obviously going to be big, I think. It's so easy to splash in, it has utility in other matchups. Some of the Gyarados lists we've seen have been playing heavy, Macho, Octillery, Shaman, Tapu Lele accounts. So even in like a matchup like that, Oricorio can find some use as an anti-Gyarados option, perhaps. I played one of my Rayquazas this weekend, and it just had niche uses that I wouldn't have seen coming, but it wasn't a really useful card, even outside of the Vespiquen matchup. The thing with Vespiquen for that matchup is if you chose to try and counter it with something like Macho, the opponent can play Hexmaniac for sure, but the key I found playing at Vespiquen with an Oricorio this weekend was for Oricorio to be effective, it had to be paired with an N. Or else your opponent usually had the means to respond. Unless they had discarded like 18 Pokemon, at which point they just didn't know you played Oricorio on the wager. So I think something like Macho could be good investment this weekend because your opponent can't Hex and N in the same turn. Something to consider. Still not sure I'd play Vespiquen this weekend as its target will be rather large, for sure.
Yeah, I disagree with you guys. I think Vespiquen would be a good play for this weekend, even though it has a larger target on its back. Because personally, I think the biggest target in the format is Garbodor. And the only deck that really beats Vespiquen, from my testing at least, is Decidueye. And Decidueye doesn't beat Garbodor, so I expect less Decidueye. So I think Vespiquen is probably a good play for this tournament because of that. But yeah, I agree with you guys. I think it's very good. I've tested it a bit. I actually don't play Zoroark. Like Chris, I think it's just a bad card. I'm trying to avoid playing Zoroark in any of my Vespiquen lists, even though I know like all the top lists in the past like 6 months have included Zoroark. I'm trying to buck the trend and not play it, because I just have a very strong dislike for the card. Yeah, I think Vespiquen's really strong. Like Chris was saying, it's very difficult to build correctly, and I think that's going to deter a lot of people from playing it, but I think the people who do play it will know their list and have a very good list. People like Jeffrey, who, topped 2 regionals with it. Raul Reddy has been playing it for years. Jeremiah Williams, like people like that, they'll obviously come with good Vespiquen lists, if they choose to play it. And I think those players would do very well, but unless you know how to build the deck, I think it's probably not a great choice. But now I want to talk about 3 different decks, that actually did very poorly at Seattle. For some of them, I'm not sure why. Others, I understand. But we'll start off with Sylveon. Sylveon had a lot of hype coming into not just this regional, but just the set overall. It's probably the second most hyped card, Pokemon at least, behind Garbodor. Maybe Drample was a little more hyped, but it was really hyped. That's the point. And it had absolutely no top 32 placements. I don't think a single top player played Sylveon either. So we'll start with Chris. Why do you think Sylveon did so poorly, and do you think that will continue in the future?
So I had the fortune and or misfortune of trying to play Sylveon in my first League Cup in the format. I wasn't really sure it'd be all that great of a deck, but it sounded mildly interesting. I wanted to get a feel for it. I thought I'd give it a shot. In the end, I think the biggest problem Sylveon has is turn 1 and turn 2. If you can get to turn 3 and 4, I think it's a fairly strong concept. The attack certainly has merit, but it's finding the right outlet for that merit. The problem is that Tapu Lele now Hexmaniac is easily searchable for anything, really, and not many decks struggle to do 60 damage by the second turn. So if they can hex you going first, they go first. You can't evolve, you only have 1 EV, you're at great risk of immediately just losing. And really, many decks can do 200 in the second turn as well, so even a lone Sylveon isn't necessarily safe. So the deck's fragility is really, I think, its biggest problem, and that's why I'm not really surprised that it failed. I played against one this weekend, Niger Plaza, and
that's an easy matchup.
Yeah. When I was testing it with Sean Poisey, actually, I was able to with Sylveon, I played a Jolteon for Rough Seas as well, so I could actually just one-shot Mega Rayquazas. I ended up taking some prizes in the game we were playing. I had very fortunate Team Rocket's heads, got some Mega Turtles and whatnot, but my opponent this weekend had no such attacks, and I didn't even game 2 aspect turn, or maybe it was 2 turns, I don't know. Regardless, the games were not especially close. I really don't think it's a good deck this time.
Andrew, what about you? What are your thoughts on Sylveon?
Yeah, I don't think Sylveon's a good deck at all, or at least the Japanese style disruption variant that became really hyped up. I think the deck just has too many inherent flaws. As Chris said, with Tapu Lele, people can just get into Hex Maniac turn 1 too easily, and then the deck plays no search cards and has no real draw support. So if you turn 1 Hex them, you shut off Energy Evolution, so you're just going to be able to knock them out on turn 2 very easily. And then another big issue I've seen with the deck is every deck, for the most part, is moving up to like 4N, and then they have 4 Via Seeker. So if you just end Sylveon like every turn of the game, it goes away from that idea that it's like a better Lapras, because you get to pick the 3 cards you have. So you have like a purposeful strategy you're executing, and just turns their hand into a bunch of random cards that they have to work with. And then another thing I saw was that some people just teched in Brock's Grit as a way to just put resources back into their deck and outrun Sylveon's disruption. And then a lot of people compared it to Plot Lapras, but I don't think they're very similar decks at all. A big thing that holds Sylveon back is that its attack has to 2-hit KO or even 3-hit KO most things, while Lapras can just 1-hit KO something, so it can remove a big threat from the field really fast and close out games a lot better than Sylveon could. And the decks just play out very differently, and I don't think Sylveon taking up extra spots for the evolution is nearly as good, and it doesn't have that early game bulkiness of 190 HP either.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I love Quad Lapras, as I'm sure a lot of people know. And I was very excited for Sylveon, when I saw it. In a Hovercast Roundtable that, was not released because of technical issues, I actually predicted Sylveon to win the national championships. And I'm very glad it didn't get released, because that was pretty silly, if that was actually released. Because I don't agree with that statement anymore. I think it's really bad. It doesn't remind me of Quad Lapras at all. It plays very differently, like Andrew said. And it's not a good type of different. The deck just feels a lot worse. It's really hard to pinpoint why, because it's a very similar concept. But it just doesn't play out the same way as Quad Lapras did. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm not surprised it didn't do well. I've lost faith in the deck. I don't think it's very good right now. But I haven't lost faith in Gyarados. Even though it didn't have a single top 50 placing, I still think it's the best deck in the format. From what I heard, there was a lot of people in Gyarados battle, teching in, Oricorios, Azelf, stuff like that, to counter it. And now, Tapu Koko is being released this weekend, and, that'll definitely see a lot of play. But I personally think Gyarados is a great play, because you really only lose to Decidueye. You should beat everything else in the format. There isn't much else that you lose to, except for, the Garbodor Espeon variants, but I think those are just worse Garbodor variants, and I think people will figure that out, that Trampa is just the ideal partner with it. You basically have strong matchups across the entire board, and, I was a little disappointed to not see it do well in Seattle, but I personally think it'll do well in Madison. I don't know if either of you guys have played a lot of Gyarados, but we'll start off with Andrew. What do you think about Gyarados? Do you think it could do well this weekend, or do you think the deck is just not very good in this format?
My primary concern with Gyarados would just be people teching so many things to beat it. the Azelf and or Oricorio. I don't know how good Oricorio is as a counter to Gyarados, but I think the Azelf's obviously very strong against it. So if everyone's teching against it, it's going to be hard to do well. But if you take away people teching against it, I think it's super strong with Choice Band now, and it's able to just get into such good damage numbers that if you avoid playing against Decidueye decks, I think you're going to have a really good tournament. If the tournament you're playing in, people aren't teching against it. And the version I thought was the best of Gyarados is just like the 4-4 or 4-3 Gyarados with it's either a 1-1 or 2-2 Octillery line. And just with the Octillery line, it's impossible to ever end them out of resources. So as soon as they get set up, it's just a consistent stream of knockouts. So the only things you have to worry about really are Decidueye, which, as we said, we think might see a decrease in play. And then, like, something like Vespiquen can beat it, but that's more like 50-50 just because it's two similar concepts.
Yeah, that matchup really comes down to, I think, just who attacks first.
So I think Gyarados is really risky with how much people are teching, but if you play it and you don't play against the people teching against it, and you don't play against Decidueye, I think you're going to be in a very strong position to go deep with it.
Yep, I agree. Chris, you recently wrote an article about Gyarados. What are your thoughts on it?
Really not quite as enthused as I maybe once was with it. It seems to me like I like Yveltal Maxis where I can never get it to test well, but other people do well with it anyway. I've always had trouble drawing out of ends, even with things like Octillery. It always seems to be one card short of what I need to pull off the right combo. Like Greninja, I wouldn't be surprised to see it do well. But especially considering the amount of hate it saw last weekend, I was asked by multiple people if I had extra Spinda. Combined with the fact that Tapu Koko promo releases this weekend, which I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about that card, but I do think people will put it in their decks for no good reason anyway. So I would not want to be playing Gyarados this weekend.
Fair enough. So we have one final deck that didn't do well at Seattle that I wanted to talk about, and that's Volcanion. It really just completely dropped off the map from what I've seen, from Mike Newey winning Utah regionals with it, to, I don't think many cut, I personally played it myself. In expanded format, he ended up, 7th or something like that. But, I didn't see any top either. So, what do you think happened to that deck? I guess we'll start off, Chris.
I've certainly heard a lot of discussion of Volcanion for this weekend.
Here, I'm sorry. Let me just ask the question again. That's all good. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. The video cut off, so we had to re-record this part. So we're just going to start with the deck that we were about to talk about, Volcanion. Volcanion just completely dropped off the map, it seemed. It went from winning the last standard regional, or second last standard regional, to doing well in Virginia, I think. I'm not sure. I don't think any top 8, but I'm sure a couple made top 32. To not doing well at all in Seattle. 0 top 32 placements, and I didn't hear of a single top player playing Volcanion either. So we'll start this question off with Chris. What do you think about Volcanion? Do you think it's just gone? How it was just ignored and, has the potential to come back and see a resurgence in Madison and potentially, Birmingham and other regionals coming forward?
Yeah, I definitely heard a lot of discussion of Volcanion for this weekend from various circles. It seems to be hyped deck of the back channels at the moment. And the fact that I'm saying this might be indication that I'm not necessarily in agreement. I think Garbodorless will have an easier time with Volcanion than Volcanion perhaps wishes to think. Drampa simply hits very hard, very quickly, and without doesn't necessarily. Without Blacksmith or other ways to accelerate energy by supporter in format, Volcanion's options are to either use items in the form of Max Elixir or dedicate time to a non-EX Volcanion, which you may not necessarily have if Drampa is gunning down fairly early in the game. So I'm not quite convinced of the Drampa matchup, although I am told that it is quite good. I have not yet seen this for myself, and I'm skeptical. They could see a resurgence. I do think it will see play this weekend. Whether that play is misguided or not is what's left to be determined.
Cool. Andrew, I know you liked Volcanion a lot last format. You took it to a top 16 and I think Dallas.
Yep.
I'm not sure if you played it before that or after that, but I know you liked the deck at one point. Do you still like Volcanion?
So the only other time I played it was at a expanded Elite Cup, which is a lot different, but that went well. So I have no negative experiences with Volcanion. I think it's very powerful, very consistent, and I think there's some minor things you can do to get better results out of it than the average player who thinks it's just really straightforward thinks, which doesn't even make sense for the deck, just because you do variable damage output every single turn, and when you choose to activate the ability to even get that variable damage output can have a big impact on how the game goes. But I would bear with Volcanion that the good lists probably need to be item heavy, which plays into Garbodor's hands. And then if you don't play an item heavy build, I feel like you're probably too slow to compete with a lot of other decks. So I think it's in an odd place right now. But if we move into a spot where Garbodor is seeing a little bit less play because people are adjusting and adapting to that, then I think Volcanion might have a shot. But something else to worry about is if people know there's Volcanion hype, people can put Vaporeon into Vespiquen. People like Israel Sosa made top 8 with Water Box, which is going to have a great matchup against Volcanion. And then Alolan Ninetales has a little bit of a fan club going on, so that's another water deck you have to worry about. So, unlike previously in the format, there's actually just a type disadvantage matchup that has to worry about as well. So I'm not sure if I'd say it's as well suited for this weekend as some of the hype might lead, and I don't think the grass decks that people are hyping up, which plays somewhat into the hype for Volcanion, are actually going to be that good anyhow.
Yeah, personally, I think Volcanion, like you said, if you play it to beat Garbodor, I think you just lose to a lot of other stuff. I think that's its biggest issue. You can't beat Garbodor and everything else from what I've seen. I have seen it beat Garbodor. Surprised, I was very surprised when I saw people, some very good players, testing Volcanion and consistently stomping Garbodor. That surprised me a lot, because I just assumed it was going to have a very bad matchup to Garbodor, regardless of how you built it, just because of how the deck functions. But yeah, it's definitely possible to beat Garbodor with Volcanion, which I think will make it playable. But I don't like the way the deck is built when you build it to beat Garbodor. I think it's just a worse version of the deck. So I'm not sure I'm on the Volcanion train. It doesn't seem like a deck I would play, because I don't think I would want to play it to beat Garbodor, because I think that's just the worst variant of the deck. I wouldn't be surprised to see it do well, though, just because I still think it's strong. I mean, it only got stronger with this new set. Field Blower, Choice Band, and Turtonator are just, 3 ridiculously good, additions to the deck. Brooklyn Hill could be played in it, too. It only got stuff from the new set. It didn't really lose much. So I was a little surprised to see it get a 0 for 32 on Top Cut placings in Seattle. I don't think it's going to be, the resurgent, best deck in Madison. I wouldn't be surprised to see some do well, but I don't think it'll win. But I've said that before, and, it won Utah Regionals, so it's won a lot more regionals than I have. Yeah, I wouldn't sleep on it, but I don't think it's the best play for this weekend, personally. But let's just talk about a couple promos now that are about to be released. Or will be legal for Madison, in Tapu Koko and Tapu Bulu GX. We've talked about Tapu Koko briefly already. I think we're all in agreement. It's a pretty good card. It'll see some play. It'll see probably more play this weekend than it will a whole year of the rest of its existence, because I think it's just ridiculously hyped right now. I don't think it's very good. But I do want to talk more about Tapu Bulu. I don't know if either of you guys have had a chance to test it, but we'll start with Andrew. What are your thoughts on Tapu Bulu? Do you think it has a chance to, have a really good showing this weekend? And what would you pair it with?
So I think Tapu Bulu itself is a card with some pretty amazing stats. Has no weakness. It can one-hit KO stuff with its primary attack. It has a solid 1 energy for 30 damage attack. And then its GX attack, if you have Choice Band, can one-hit KO while healing itself off. As far as stuff I've tested it in, I tried it with Lurantis GX and just kind of like a standard Lurantis list, and that didn't seem that good to me. It seemed kind of clunky, and it didn't seem like they paired as well as I thought they would. And then there's this deck that got top 8 at a Japanese tournament that played Bridget, no Forest, and it used Bridget to set up a bunch of the Lurantis promos to boost Tapu Bulu's damage output, and it played Max Elixir to power it up quickly, and that seemed a little better than Lurantis, but it still didn't seem too amazing to me. And then something I saw on Facebook was pairing it with Vikavolt from Sun and Moon, which accelerates energies from your deck. I haven't had time to test that variant yet, but I thought that one had the most promise of anything I've seen, and is kind of similar to Emvor Rayquaza EX deck from a few years ago. There's some differences between it, but it's the same concept of accelerate energy, discard all the energy, next turn accelerate energy again, discard it so you can get the 1-hit KO. So I thought that had some potential. I haven't had a chance to try it out yet.
Yep, I agree. I think Tapu Bulu is very strong. I haven't had a chance to try it out either. I would not be surprised to see it do well this weekend from someone who has had a chance to try it out and do well, and see what the best list is and what it pairs with. I'm with you, Andrew. I don't like the Lurantis Bulu version because I think the Lurantis having to retreat, I think, is the worst part about it, because you want to be able to retreat from Lurantis into Bulu the turn after you Flower Supply, and you can't really do that without a Float Stone. Well, you can't. You can't. So I think that's the biggest issue with the deck, and I think that's why it's very clunky and not inconsistent, but just it doesn't flow well. So I don't like Bulu with Lurantis. I've still yet to find the right partner with it because I haven't been able to test it, but I think it's ridiculously strong. I wouldn't be surprised to see someone do well with it. Chris, what about you? What do you think about Tapu Bulu and its chances this weekend?
It's definitely a strong card inherently, and I think I'm slightly higher on the Lurantis version than the two of you are, but after testing it a lot this past Sunday, I don't think it quite has what it takes to be successful this weekend. Simply, has trouble with Garbodor. You either play a perfect game where you set up everything and play 2 items, you'll usually win that game. But I'm not sure that happens more often than here's an Ultra Ball with an awkward hand, discard 4 or 5 items on turn 1, and then you're obviously in a huge hole when it comes to Garbodor. So I don't think the largest version will have what it takes to be successful this weekend. The leakable version is something I haven't tested yet, and honestly, until earlier today, kind of forgotten existed. Definitely something I want to test. Could be very interesting. I think it's
Yeah. So I think we've talked about all the decks that I want to get to. So to end the show, we're gonna talk about, for me and Andrew, what 3 decks we would consider playing this weekend, and what 3 decks we would be most afraid of and most want to tech for. And, obviously Chris is going, so the 3 decks I guess you're most considering, and the 3 decks you're most scared of. I'll start out, because I haven't started a question yet. I want to start. So my number 1 deck is Gyarados. I've already said I think it's the best deck in the format. I think it's really strong. I think, with what we've all said, Decidueye will probably see less play. I think that only helps the deck. I'm not afraid of Tapu Koko. I think you can beat decks even with it. Azelf is an issue. Decidueye is always going to be an issue. Oricorio isn't really an issue for the deck because you rarely have Pokemon on your discard. You can manage that pretty easily. So it's really just those 2 counters. The deck is just ridiculously strong. I'd expect, I don't expect 0 to make top 50 again because I think the deck is too strong to have that happen 2 weeks in a row. So that would be my number 1 choice. My number 2 choice, Drampagard. It's the best deck in the format by most people's standards. Not mine, but by most people's standards. So it's a really strong deck. Always have it in your options to play. I think it's not just me. It's just a strong deck. And number 3, I'd say the 3rd deck I would probably play. Probably a Tapu Bulu variant. I haven't tested it a lot because I don't have to go to many tournaments. I'm not going to anything until Worlds, so I haven't put in a lot of testing. But I think if I was going to Madison, I would have tested Bulu a lot because this card is just really strong. So I think Tapu Bulu would be my 3rd choice. Best one probably would have been it before last week, but now that everyone knows about it, I'm not sure it's the greatest play. Even though I said it was a great play before. Things change in the matter of 20 minutes, but no, I don't think it's great. I think people will tech for it, like everyone was saying. It's a strong deck for sure, but I'm too scared of people teching for it, even with the decline of Decidueye. So yeah, those are my 3 plays. The 3 decks I'd be most afraid of are any Garbodor variant, obviously, after last week, and I don't think I need to say much more about that. Decidueye still, mostly because of the people that play the deck and just love the deck, not because I think it's, the 2nd strongest deck in the format, but because of that, because, people just love it. And the 3rd deck I'd be most afraid of is Alolan Ninetales. Which is a big reversal from last week for me. I said the deck was really bad. I've played against it a lot more. I've played with it a little bit. It's not awful. I'll admit, it's not awful. And, a lot of top players are really in love with the deck. It has a very strong Garbodor matchup from what I've seen, and by very strong I mean like 60-40 because nothing has like a ridiculously good Garbodor matchup because the deck is really busted. But it has a relatively strong Garbodor matchup, which is a huge reason why I think it'll see a lot of play this weekend. So that would be the 3rd deck that I would be most afraid of. Let's go to Chris, since you're going. Why don't you give us your 3 from each?
I'd be primarily most concerned about Garbodor, and I think that's going to be a pretty unanimous opinion all around. It's going to be the most... I'll say it'll be the most played deck. I'm not sure that's much of a limb to go out on. It's pretty solid, I think. I'd be also concerned about Decidueye, because it has its loyal followers, it seems, no matter what. Especially a couple in the Indiana, Ohio area. I'd expect to see a decent one of it. The same could be said of Vespercorn. There's a lot of, Illinois, Nebraska, into Missouri, maybe even, I don't know. Players that really like Vespercorn, and seem to always want to play it no matter what. So, especially given what happened last weekend, I'd expect those 3 to be the biggest things to watch out for. As for myself, I'll be considering a Tapu Bulu variant of some sort. I think the card's very good. Need to find these tins somewhere. But I think it's very strong. Xander Perro played Mega Gardevoir last weekend to 5-0 start, and then he all but lost out from there, which probably should tell me something, but it's something I want to consider. I think a list built correctly could do well against Garbodor. And finally, Raichu saw a bit of play last weekend. I think it might be able to deal with certain techs in it, Drampa, Garbodor, Espeon, whatnot, in a way that could be competitively effective. So those are the three things I'm looking at. They're most off the wall. Otherwise, I'll probably end up playing something boring.
Gotcha. So we'll wrap it up with Andrew. What are your 3 plays for this weekend if you were going, and what are the 3 decks you would be most afraid of?
So, going in, I'd be most afraid of Trampa Garbodor, just as it just won. It had so much success at Seattle, and I think it's going to be the most played deck, so that should be your number 1 worry. And then number 2 is the same as you guys. I think Decidueye just has too many loyal followers. They'll see play. People have so many different variants. There's just like the old school version. People are playing with Alolan Ninetales. Some people are playing it with Turtonator GX. So there's just so many things people are trying to just try to make the deck work for them somehow. And then third, I'd worry about playing against Vikavolt GX, just as Russell wrote an article about it. And back at Virginia Regionals, he had written an article about Umbreon Wobbuffet. And then when I get there, I play against it round 1, and for like the first 5 rounds, I'm just seeing a bunch of Umbreon decks around me, which was strange, especially since I was playing Mega Ray, so a deck that had Jolteon and Zoroark wasn't fun to play against round 1, but I still managed to 2-0 it, luckily.
Russell will part of the meta changer.
But as far as decks that I'd want to play, number 1 for me would actually be Umbreon Zoroark. It's been a deck I've been working on since Sun and Moon first came out, and I think it got a lot better with Choice Band coming out in Guardians Rising. And since the deck's not like a meta deck right now, like I try to come up with reasons to discount it, but then I look at my win percentage in my testing games, and it's just so high that I can't ignore the deck as being really good. Just Umbreon 2-hit KOs everything with Choice Band now, as well as sets up stuff with the snipe damage. So that's just a really consistent backbone, and I've found Zoroark Break is super, super strong now. Like all these new GX Pokemon and stuff have like some insanely powerful attacks, and you can just copy them through 1 energy with Zoroark Break, and so you can, especially with Choice Band, like if you're against like a Lapras GX, for example, you can just copy Blizzard Burn and 1-hit KO them. And then it's also helped out by 1, being able to remove Focus Ashes with Field Blower, so you actually get the knockouts, but 2, people just aren't playing Focus Sash anymore, so you don't even have to worry about getting them removed in the first place, which helps out with its damage math a bit. And then number 2 would just be Trampa Garbodor. It's the best deck right now, so it's just the safest play. So if, like, I was testing throughout the week and the stuff I liked was failing for me, I just default to that. It put up the results it did for a reason, so it's pretty safe. The only thing that concerns me about both Trampa and Umbreon is fighting weakness, because I think there could be some overreaction where people play some really bad fighting decks to try to counter them. But I think all the fighting Pokemon in the format aren't inherently that powerful. So if you avoid them the early rounds of the tournament, you should be fine. But there's always that possibility of you just hit one early and then you hit another one because you're at the lower tables and you just get caught in the mud down there and never get out. And then my third choice would be Water Box with the Lapras. Before Seattle, I was testing Lapras Water Box a bit, and it's okay. But then Israel Sosa wrote his article on it, and I was reading that, and I thought his list from that article seemed really good, and then he obviously performed really well with it at Seattle, making top 8. And the only change I'd make is I'd fit in a Wishy-Washy from Sun and Moon, because you can just retreat the Lapras into Wishy-Washy and then use his Cowardice ability to pick it up and put Lapras back active. And you can use that to reset Lapras. You can use Blizzard Burn every turn, so it puts less strain on your resources trying to find switching cards. So it can let you be a little bit more aggressive in some games, I think.
Yeah, that sounds really strong. But I think that's all we have for today. So I want to thank you guys so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Here's your time to go ahead and plug your sites, your Twitters, whatever you want to plug. So here's the floor to you guys. Someone's got to speak first.
Alright, well, I guess I can go first. You can check out sixprizes.com. We're up to publishing 3-4 times a week. Soon enough, it should be consistently 4. Heading into nationals, we have a marathon of articles running from the end of Origins to the day before nationals, or internationals, I guess. So be sure to check that out. And by the time you guys see this, there should be a redesign launched on the Google website, so be sure to go check that out as well.
Awesome. Andrew?
You can find me at the CharizardLounge.com, as well as on Twitter, Charizard Lounge, without the in it through Twitter. And on the website in the past 2 weeks, there's an article on Garbodor, an article on Solgaleo, Rayquaza, and then an article on Umbreon, Zoroark. And before we started recording this, I actually got a message, and someone was telling me that Solgaleo Rayquaza actually won the Indonesian regional championship that happened last weekend, and it's not the same exact list for my article. I haven't had much time to dive too into it, but from what I've seen, it played like all the same attackers, so it had the non-GX Solgaleo and the Drampa GX to give you a basic attacker, so you don't have to keep powering up Solgaleos, and just use Drampa for knockouts. So that deck, I think, is pretty strong too, so people might want to look into that a bit before this weekend as well.
Awesome. So yeah, all their links and Twitter descriptions that they just talked about, channels, it'll all be in the links below. So if you wanted to check out any of their articles or sites or Twitter handles, just go check those out. You don't need to pause the video or anything. I'll have those for you guys. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Good luck this weekend in Madison and Birmingham, and thank you all for watching. Have a good day.